As a young girl, I was very innocent. I had no idea what real life was like. I'd been raised in a preacher's family with very loving parents and a loving environment, and I had no idea that evil was real or that problems existed in life. I guess I knew they did, but I didn't think I would be susceptible to any of them. I was a supervisor at a law firm, and I had this guy that came in to volunteer to work at night. And pretty soon he started schmoozing with me, and next thing you knew, we were dating. I was very in love, very head over heels. He started this harebrained scheme where we were going to start our own business together and talked me into doing it, and we ended up having that business for 12 years. So very passionate, motivated, driven. That's the David I fell in love with. I noticed almost immediately after the wedding that things started to change. It went from this beautiful whirlwind romance to kind of a gradual realization that I was in something that was not healthy. He had been abused as a child pretty severely, and I was very sympathetic about that, but I had no idea that I would start seeing that same kind of behavior from him. After the initial year or so, it would just every year just get a little bit worse. One time I remember getting a black eye because he was upset because he couldn't find our car at the airport. Another time he shoved me down the stone steps behind our house. We ended up having a child together, and he actually hit me once when I was holding the baby, and I thought, you could have hit the baby. I didn't want to be the woman that was divorced twice, so I put up with a lot, and he was always very repentant afterwards and very charming. I had a lot of compassion and empathy for him, so I would put my own feelings on hold to try to think, well, he's broken, I need to just love him. And I had the false belief that if you just love somebody enough, they'll change. One December after Christmas, I decided I just could not live with this anymore. So I actually moved out to an apartment and lived separate from him for about a year. I had a phone call from him telling me that he was going to check himself into a mental institution. I was so glad. We had this wonderful conversation. But he said, there's only one thing that bothers me, and that's that our son Skylar's birthday is coming up on Monday. This was a Saturday. And I said, well, I'll tell Skylar his dad's sick and that you'll see him, when you're out of the hospital, and he'll understand. Well, I had no idea I was basically giving him permission to kill himself. I was angry, angry, angry. And even at the funeral, went up to his body in the casket and was yelling at him saying, how could you do this? I felt like I should have seen it coming. I should have known that last phone call, that's what he was planning. I realize now that there's no way I could have known that. He was going to great lengths to hide it from me. I felt like I was going through something nobody in the world had ever been through. And I would imagine people driving by my house and pointing to the house and saying, oh, there's the house where the lady's husband killed himself. I didn't want anybody to know what had happened. I think I just kind of tried to dig myself into a hole. I bought a new house for me and the boys, and I'm trying to get things stabilized. And one morning, I hear this loud knock on the door, and there's a policeman standing outside my little house in Mesquite. He tells me he's going to take me down to the city jail. And I was just completely surprised and aghast. I find out it's because of some checks I've written to the grocery store. I was in survival mode after my husband's death, and if the business wasn't doing well and I needed food for the kids, I'd write a check and just think, oh, I'll take care of it later. And yeah, sure, I got some notices in the mail, but what was that compared to all the other stuff I was going through? This police officer took me down to the jail, and the metal doors closed behind me, and it's almost like I felt like I couldn't breathe. The lowest point I've ever been in my life, humiliated, feeling terrible as a mother, like what kind of mom lets herself get arrested? And I just spent 10 long days there. During that time, it's like God really got my attention. It was almost like I felt God was saying, okay, you're paying a little attention to me, but now you're giving me your complete attention. I just started writing prayers like, dear God, forgive me. Dear God, I want to know you. Dear God, please come into my life. Please help change me. It was all about surrender. For the first time in my life, God wasn't just a force out there. God was someone I could surrender to and trust my life to. And then out of that came, more of a wanting to help other people. I started going to church at First Rowlett, and One of the first things I got asked to do was to help with a grief support group. And I just immediately felt like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm supposed to do. I had done everything wrong in my grief. I had focused on all the wrong things. I had tried to rush through it. I hadn't acknowledged it. And I took all those things that I did wrong and I started helping people face their grief in a good, healthy way. When I first came to Highland Park, I realized that they kind of had an opening for someone to lead the grief group. And I said, oh, pick me, pick me. I was so excited. And so every single thing I've been through, I can now use because I understand addiction. I understand alcoholism. I understand adultery. I understand abuse. I mean, all the things I've been through in my marriages and in my life now, I can use to help other people going through those. God never wastes pain. I think that whole surrender of your pain and of your way of doing things is what can get you out of it. It's just realizing God is real, God is available, God's power can help you get through whatever you're going through in your life. You still have rough times, but you know you're not alone going through them.